So we start with our top.
Can I just ask a question? So we are now voting on whether or not these things...
No, well, hang on. You're voting right now on a time extension. All those for, any against, carried.
I'm against.
Yeah. Was that 3? Was that 3 years?
It's 3 past 8.
Okay. All right.
Can I just ask, so we are now...
Okay, so have you all got your heads around what's coming? Okay, so I think we'll start.
So just to be quite clear, 1, 2, 3 proposals are now going to be put to see if they join these other things.
Yes.
To be for inclusion as the draft to 2019-20 budget annual plan. That's what we're doing now. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we'll just start by getting the chief executive through staff just to say what the effects, financial implications will be of these 3 motions, 3 proposed motions.
Okay, so give me a chance. So the first one is a increase in costs of $230,000, and that includes the cost of vehicles and so forth.
Correct. That's everything.
That's $230,000, and that will be a 1-year trial or 1-year opportunity to test that. The reintroduction of CBD remission.
$30,000 of the first one on what's in front of us because the $200,000 line for the plan was lost. So the net effect on this is $30,000. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then the CBD remission.
Okay, sorry, can you explain that, please, in simpler language?
Can you?
Because it was
How can a $230,000 service cost 30?
because your $200,000 was baked into the proposal that the staff has brought today.
So they've already been taken out of the base button.
No.
For what?
So what she's doing,
She, Councillor O'Leary.
sorry, what Councillor O'Leary is trying to do is we've already baked into the base budget item E, which was Victoria and the River, where obviously that was no today. So from a base budget perspective, if we've taken that out and we're putting this 230, the net difference of that is only 30. However, that's not taken in consideration the financial impacts on the other 2 items that are
No, but Richard was just talking about
this
one.
But this one item will increase the costs associated with the City Safe operation by $230,000.
Yes.
That's
correct.
a true statement.
Yes.
The next one is basically the CBD remission was removed on a third basis over 3 years, and it's about $1.2 million per annum. So adding that back in will reduce our development contributions by about $800,000 this year and $400,000 next year. And the parking trial, I am unaware of what the financial impact of that one is because I do not have that information with me, and I'm going to ask the GM.
1.4 million.
Yeah.
So in terms of the reverting back, abandoning the trial and reverting back to the CCTP free before 9 and after 3, it will be a partial year of an additional revenue that's been budgeted for of around $600,000 for the first year. And then that increases to about 1.1 million in the second and thereafter years. Ongoing with the abandonment of the trial will be the need to upgrade the infrastructure that we have in place, our parking meter heads, and ongoing and understanding how those will be funded for in the future because there is currently no budget in place for those. So that information will be coming back to the GNI committee on the 26th of March.
Agreed. I'm just going to make it clear, and I was doing the maths I'm going to retract my comments on the CBD remission. We need to do proper modelling on that one and the impact of that. I was provided some information earlier in the piece, but I might have to challenge them and see whether or not they're actually reflective of the level of apartment activity that's happening in the city at the moment, to give actually accurate information. So we'll hold fire on those one. Sorry?
Well, there's 60 apartments just gone in one block alone at $30,000 an apartment. That's $1.8 million right there.
But that's what this is asking, that's what councillor Bunty's and my motion's asking, is for information to come back. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And the third one, you don't know.
No.
So, and also, if I may, through the chair, in addition to the parking revenue, that parking meter, there, currently we also get a targeted rate of $145,000 per year from the CBD businesses. Therefore, that would need to be considered and would be removed also should the offering not be in place of 2 hours free parking.
Okay, so we'll get started. We'll start with the Mallet-Tuman park control first. So we're going to...
Chair, have
Yep.
we finished the City Safe program? I thought we were partway through City Safe programming extension, and those names up on the board there were those waiting with questions.
Yeah, I'm starting on the park. We've got 3 here. We can take them in any order. I'm taking the park control first. Okay, so... yeah, we'll hold your place on the board when we come back to it. All right, so do we want to go straight to debate on this one? I think we all understand it, do we? Or do you want to go to question first? This is on the park control. Is everyone comfortable going straight to debate?
I've got a question to ask.
Yes, sure.
And that is my understanding, and I may be incorrect in this, but my understanding that the trial 2-hour free parking was to come back to council sometime between now and the end of this financial year, similar to the eyesight that we talked about earlier on. And are we sort of preempting having a debate now to a report that we're really waiting for, which may include this and or a number of other options?
Yep, so what Councillor Mallett's asking for us is when we bring the budget back in April, that it reflects, the base budget reflects as if the parking control has been abandoned. It's not saying that the parking control will be abandoned, so it's the starting point. It's a fine, finessed resolution that achieves that. But on the 26th of March, the G&I committee is considering the trial, and in April as well, the full council following.
Yes, so just to confirm, Richard, the 26th of March is the G&I committee, and then the outcome from the G&I committee will be included in the 4th of April annual plan council meeting.
Are we not then duplicating this? We'll spend a good hour on this today. We'll spend probably another hour on it in the G&I committee, and maybe 2 hours on it in the next council meeting.
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
Yes.
But we're doing it because a member's asked for it to come up, and as with the other 2 members have asked them to come up, there's a mover and a seconder for them, so we are going to go through this. So let's go to debate. Councillor Gary, you've moved it. Would you like to start?
Yes, it's simply a matter of we have imposed extraordinary rate increases on our community. This is a situation where funding every dollar that is not collected through the parking is a dollar that has to be paid on the same ratepayers who have just experienced a 9.5% and 3.8% rate increases going forward. I think it is incumbent on us to try and accept that if people are receiving a service, i.e. the businesses in the CBD, but primarily the parkers in the CBD, should pay for their own parking rather than the ratepayers who may or may not be using that at all.
Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. Look, I'll vote against this motion because pretty much exactly what Rob said. We will be doing it all again shortly, but we will be doing it with the benefit of some information behind us at this stage. If we're effectively saying is let's just nix it without waiting for the information, and I find that quite irresponsible. So I'm voting against it.
Councillor Rob.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat through quite a number of the parking task force meetings, and there are quite a number of options that are available, which might, after the trial is finished, take the direct cost of the free parking away from the general residential ratepayer. So I'm quite keen, given the hard work that has gone into the Central City Parking Task Force, that we give them an opportunity to bring back to Council through the G&I Committee the results of their finding, which includes also a considerable amount of work that has been provided by the Central Business Association and by members and by city businesses to the success or otherwise of this trial project. So I won't be supporting this motion today, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say that I may not support a change in how it might be funded going forward. But I'd really like to see all of the information on the table so that I can make an informed decision, and I'm aware that that is going to happen over the next few months. Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, look, what we're doing as a council, of course, is we're trying to encourage people to get out of their motor vehicle. Here we are, we're encouraging the use of public transport. We're encouraging people to use Lime scooters. We're doing all these sort of things to encourage people, and car sharing systems and all those sort of things. And yet we say to them, come into town and park for free. To me, it just doesn't quite make sense. When we're trying to enhance the use of public transport and all these other modes of transport, yet we say, come and park for free. Just doesn't make sense to me. So I will be supporting the motion.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Yes, I obviously have, I agree with what a lot of Councillor Pascoe has said. I have real concerns around a process. I would be saying to the Central Business Association, get in front of your computer screens right now, because in the dead of the afternoon, in a quiet time, something's going to happen that you've had no say in. So I think the process has been outlined, quite adequately illustrated by Councillor Pascoe, and we should follow that process. I mean, obviously I want a system where our major shopping centres are roughly on equal footing and parking is one, but I respect that there be findings of the survey and water under the bridge. This is not the last debate on this issue, but I certainly wouldn't be supporting any change today.
Councillor Angela.
I don't think anything's happening in the dead of the afternoon, although that does sound rather ominous. This is the process for the annual plan, and members are entitled to put up proposals, and that's what I think we've all done today, actually, with some interesting and sometimes really good debates, sometimes some challenging debates. So, yeah, this is the appropriate time, and it will only inform the draft annual plan, and there are still several meetings before all of these things are decided. This is the time for ideas to be put forward, and I support that.
Gary, do you want to rush a reply?
No, that's...
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is lost, 6 against, 454.
Okay, we now will go to the reintroduction of the CBD remission, moved by Councillor Angela, seconded by Councillor Bunting. We'll go straight to debate on this if people are comfortable with that. Councillor Angela.
Yeah, look, all I'm principally opposed to this, to the quick review that happened with the development contributions. That's no surprise to anybody, and I will be consistent on that. I have put this in just so that we can get some financial information back and some transparent information back on what's happening, and to extend this to the new for the next 2021, which will be our sort of process starting with our next LTP, so whoever is around the table at that time. The reason that I'm raising the CBD remission, I would like to put forward the whole entire policy again, but I'm not going to be doing that, is because the CBD is going from strength to strength, and I think it needs a little bit more time. That I have had an awful lot of developers tell me that they will go elsewhere. The stuff that's happening in town at the moment is a result of investors putting in their developments prior to us removing the CBD remission. And I just think it's madness, actually, to stop something that is working really well and delivering on the strategic outcome, which is to reinvigorate the CBD. I don't want that to stop, and that's my reasons for reintroducing it on the basis of getting that information back for the 4th of April meeting.
Councillor Gary.
Lots of things look like they're working when they're being subsidised, and I'm not at all sure that that is only the CBD remissions that is boosting what's going on in the CBD. But to the extent it is, that's not fair. That is simply not fair. What you're doing is you're asking people who run shops out at the base, ratepayers or Rototuna ratepayers who don't come into town, ratepayers who have no business whatsoever in the middle of town, to subsidise someone else's development. And that's just simply wrong. There is no moral or logical reason for continuing these remissions. If they can't make it work without being subsidised, prices will simply drop until such time as they can work. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, whenever we muck up the market by trying to subsidise things, we send bad signals to the market, and the market will respond to that, and after a while they become utterly dependent on the subsidy, and you don't want that. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I was the one who put up the motion to make it a three-year phase out of the CBD remissions, and that was after many long discussions before that plan, because I'm the guy that's going for up, not out, up in the centre of town, and I thought that was the best we could achieve at the time. I'm encouraged by the fact that, hey, I might be able to make a wee bit more ground here. I'm very interested in finding out more, because quite simply I want to find out if the move that we put into the LTP has had an effect on development of the CBD. Regards the it's not fair, look, it's not fair to have infill on the suburbs and a huge strain on our infrastructure and all our ratepayers paying for that. It's not fair to have poor urban design. It's not fair to have a city that looks like a flippin' donut. It's not fair to do things like a parking trial to reactivate the CBD and then not back it up with a consistent remissions policy. So I'm quite happy to have a crack at this and to find out more information and make a more educated decision in April, but at least let's get the education.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to just reinforce some of those comments that the previous two councillors already said. I was in favour of the slower, lower transition of the CBD remission to allow businesses the time to adapt to the new circumstances. We had a little bit of evidence, anecdotal, but evidence that the CBD remission might be causing a little bit of a slowdown on some of the new projects, but I'm not entirely sure whether that's a long-term or short-term trend. I would really like the part that leads me to support this at this time is the B, and I know that it may not go further in the annual plan. We might determine that the financial impacts of reversing this are too great, and that's fine too. But I am really interested in the impact of our policies when we've all agreed that the revitalisation of the CBD is a priority for council. So it makes it a difficult decision, but I'm happy to support this for the time.
In the CBD, Mark Neal told us in the last couple of weeks that the price of land to build apartments has tripled over the last 2 years, and that's because there's huge profits to be made in apartments on that land. the density levels in the CBD are the highest of anywhere in the city. And our pipes will fill up, our roads will get worn out, and we will need to pay for the infrastructure required for the increase in density. And that's what the that's what this CBD remission, why we took it off. It was only a year ago we took it off. We've probably still got, some of us have probably still got ice on our bruises from the last 10-year plan when we fought this through and we got there. And why are we coming back now and re-looking at something that hasn't even had a chance to bed in yet? The apartments that are being built already had their consents through ahead of what happened. And taking into account growth pays for growth, should our suburbs be paying for developers to get a free ride by not paying DCs, but still getting whatever they can for the apartments? Auckland has had all sorts of incentives for apartments, and right now there's a scary situation of a huge tsunami of apartments coming onto the market in Auckland, and they're already not selling, and rents are already in free fall. And that's from a subsidy that's gone through with the council helping, with it ending up with a surplus in apartments that may not be able to be sold, or if they can, they'll be possibly even at below the price it's cost to build them. And that's the beginning of a collapsing market, housing market. So I'm very happy with what we've done. I'm very happy with the removing the remissions over 3 years. I think all of us agreed to that at the time. Not all of us, but the majority of us around this table agreed to that at the time, agreed that 3 years was the right thing to do. To now come back and trying to be pushing it out to 10 years or 5 years or removing it altogether, to me is giving to the developers at the cost of the ratepayers. It'll be a minimum of a 1% rates increase to do this, or other things are going to have to be removed from the plan to make this work. And I'm certainly not brave enough to increase rates above what we've already told the ratepayers it is. So I just question why we're even going here. Right of reply, Councillor Angela.
Yeah, thanks. Look, this is maybe some misunderstanding here. This is the CBD remission is not just about residential development. The CBD remission was a strategy put forward to invigorate our CBD, and whilst it cost at the time, I think it took about 12 months to bed in, around $1.2 million. The benefit back to the city, to the CBD, was $6.5 million of benefit. This is not putting money into developers' pockets. Commercial development creates jobs. Commercial development creates progress and wealth for people, jobs that support people and their families. That's what this is about. The residential development that's occurred in the last 5 years since we've had the remission in is, I would say, nothing compared to the commercial development. We've seen some incredible developments actually right alongside VOTR. I doubt that would have happened without that remission. There is a huge development happening, Union Square, I think it's called. That's, investors invest in our CBD. The way they make it work is the commercial property, the retail stores that go in, that create jobs for the people of the city. Everybody benefits, and that's the outcome that I'm interested in. That's the outcome that I seek and I sought when we put in the CBD remission all those years ago. We have created jobs, we have created a better looking CBD, a more invigorated CBD. The VOTR is the success that it is because of this, in part, I'm not saying it's entirely responsible, but in part because of the CBD remission. I think it's the ASB Bank. Is it the ASB Bank's the new one? I spoke to the developer of that, the owner of that building. He said he would not have done that. It wouldn't have made sense to do that without the CBD remission. So no, this is not about residential development in the city. That's a great consequence of it. This is about the commercial viability and the $6.5 million benefit we get for 1.2 million, and that benefits everybody.
So point of order on accuracy, the building next to the Victoria and the River and the ASB building didn't add any floor space, so there would have been no increase in development levies whatsoever by those two projects going ahead. No, it's a point of order. It's a point of order on accuracy.
No,
Councillor
I was
Angela.
expressing an opinion.
It was an inaccurate opinion, and I'm just pointing out the point of order on. Okay, so we'll go to the board to vote on this one. Stop. Excuse me, Councillor Angela, can you please be quiet? We're voting. Excuse me, ladies. The rules are clear. Quiet.
The motion is carried, 6-4, 5 against.
Okay, so we now move to the City Safe extension. Moved by Councillor Angela, seconded by Councillor Siggy. Can we go straight to discussion on this one? I think we've talked about this enough over the years. So we start with Councillor Angela.
I've got some questions.
Sure.
I've had my name up on the board twice for questions on
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Never got to me because it's been deferred, so can I ask some
Yep,
questions?
go ahead.
Thank
Yep,
you.
I said I would go back to Councillor Paula first, so.
Okay, well, then I'm happy with Paula first, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Getting my head back into this space, I was asking whether the 5 additional FTE would make a substantial difference to this behaviour in the suburban areas. So this is, and I think I was halfway through saying their presence is to be a deterrent and to be a connector with the police.
That's right. It's intended that they would do what they do currently in the central city, but do it across the suburban areas on demand or whenever there is a presence and we receive calls from the community. When they are not engaged in responding to an event, they will be proactively engaging and patrolling out there, doing like we do, working in doing outreach activity, working in concert with the People's Project, looking at the housing needs, working with police, with the community agencies out there, the Western Community Centre and the like with that.
Okay, so they'll be geographically distributed according to the need, like it might be one in Hamilton East, one in Dinsdale, whatever's required, or they'll be mobile, the 5 of them will be roving around the...
To provide a 7-day-a-week, 12-hour-a-day, you would need a total of 5 staff. The intention was we'd have a 2-person patrol that would be able to respond anywhere across the city on a as-demand requirement. Outside of that, they will be having proactive patrolling and tasking set for them.
Did you say 12 hours, so 24 hours?
10 to 12 hours a day, depending on, obviously, the time of the year.
Okay. And is that what we're finding in the suburban areas, that the issues extend beyond the normal sort of... I mean, I'm just genuinely asking, they extend between the 9 to 5 or 8:30, 7 o'clock, whenever a cafe might open till the end of the day? Do they go into the evenings? I know they do in the central city because things are continuously open, but do they do that in the...
We get calls from... the number of calls that we get on our 0800 number is only a proportion of the activity which is out there. Of those, there are calls into the evenings and the presence around people like, places like 5 Crossroads, where there are eateries and places like that, which is an attractant for people, and it's an attractant for people who are part of our at-risk community.
Okay, so with this, in approving this, we'll get to know what the level of behaviour is like, because we'll have more people on the ground determining that. And
as we went through a series of community meetings that Councillor James organised, they had them in Hamilton East, in West Hamilton at the Western Community Centre and at Rotatuna,
yes.
And there was an overwhelming feedback from the community members who I engage with about the fact that this is an ongoing issue which is not being dealt with, and it wasn't confined to an 8 to 4 appearance.
Final question then, thank you, that's good. this is an approach that you've discussed with the police, and they're comfortable that it'll make a positive difference?
Absolutely. The police are not in a position to be putting attention or effort into the type of activity that this is intended to address. It is the same as we are talking about in the central city, only there has been a degree of displacement for some people out of the central city to the areas where there was no attention on them, and which is causing considerable angst for a number of members of the community.
I just wanted to make sure that it supported the work of the police, because we know that City Safe can report and, you know, try and move people on, but they don't have the same powers as the police have. So I just wanted to make sure that was...
This is very much about visibility and engagement. That's City Safe being out there, being seen, and then being seen to do something. And that's to have some engagement and or to be able to get some assistance and support from the police on an as required basis.
Okay, thank you
But
very
there
much.
are the wider community, government, other government agencies will be working with as well.
Thank you. I suppose there'll be a bit of a focus where there are after-hour liquor outlets and things as well, yeah?
Alcohol and food.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm trying to get my head around the costs. You're adding 5 FTEs. How big, adding those 5 onto your existing FTEs, how big will City Safe be in terms of FTEs if this particular project goes ahead?
That would take them up to 24.
24 FTEs.
But that's doing a range of roles. That includes all our CCTV camera coverage as well, because they're all under the same City Safe designation as a safety officer.
Okay.
So there's, in addition to that, I need to point this out, we actually have the contract which is part funded by the Regional Council for a presence at the Transport Centre. So there's a number of activities that we actually provide. There is also, we have a compliance officer who is full-time following up on all of the public places bylaw compliance activity. So when I use that number of 24, that's inclusive of everything, including the leadership.
But 5 would be about a 20-25% increase in the size of those, in the numbers who are actually fulfilling that role?
No, it would be bigger than that. It's
bigger than that.
It's probably 30-35%.
Okay, so have we taken into account some overhead charges in terms of what overhead would get allocated to this? You know, I'm looking to get a true cost.
Okay,
and the 230, I suspect, is the cost of wages, the cost of the vehicle, cost of uniform, all those kind of direct costs that you would add together.
The 230 is simply for salary only for 5 staff.
And the cars?
No, the cars, I'm determined to repurpose an existing vehicle from within our fleet. There won't be an additional car required. The running costs will be within our existing budget. Training uniforms will be within our existing budget.
Okay, so I'd like to see some, if this does move ahead, I'd like to see a bit more overview on that to make sure that we know what the true cost of this particular project is going to be, rather than just taking the direct costs or some marginal costs into that. We've mentioned we also use contractors for security. What, is that potentially a cheaper option than it is? Presumably we went down the road of contractors many years ago because presumably it was cheaper than employing our own staff to provide security. Is that an option in this area in the context of it being managed and some of that overhead cost being managed elsewhere rather than within council?
When City Safe first started, we were using contract staff through a third-party contractor, and there were reasons in performance-wise as to why we transitioned from ending that contract and making all staff in-house. And yet the costing between the two, there was no differential at the end of the day. Okay, all right. And then there's talk now of this being a trial. Do you sense any resourcing issues in terms of looking for 5 people who presumably, I suspect you haven't got at the moment,
and saying to them, we'll train you, but, or we may have to train you, but it might only be for 12 months?
We would have to train people if we took them on. There would be a significant, as there is, training requirement. However, if it's only approved for 12 months, we'll take them on a temporary basis.
Will that add to the cost that you're envisaging here?
No.
Okay.
Just to clarify a point that Calvin mentioned before, one of the key reasons that we moved to an in-house operation was we had increasing expectations of what our City Safe officers would do. So it wasn't an underlying performance issue with the contractor, it was our expectations were changing, and we felt that it was best to manage those, increase the expectation with our own staff rather than that through a contractor.
Look, I'm only making the comparison in terms of whether it has any difference in the costing. Because I guess the rationale behind a contractor in the first place was that the contractor could deliver the services that we needed at that time at a lower cost than what council could have provided those same services for.
I'm not quite, it predates my time in council when that first started on a trial basis, but my understanding was at that time there was no one in council doing that, and given that a contractor was already providing a range of other security related services, they were given the opportunity. Okay. We've since moved to increase the scope and breadth of what we want this position to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Calvin. Right. With regards to City Safe and how they interact with beggars and antisocial behaviour in town at the moment, they're quite dependent on the cameras, aren't they? Getting them pointed there. Are you confident that without the cameras, because we don't have cameras in these areas like Five Crossroads, etc., Dinsdale, etc., are you confident that they'll be as effective?
They will be as effective as by having a two-person patrol attend. The issue for the community at the moment is they have no one to report that to, and if they do report it to City Safe, they're getting little or no service response.
So what, when, in real terms, you say, so when they ring on a Saturday and say there's someone, huffing outside my store in Dinsdale, what happens? They're not getting. Well,
the reality is that the only staff we have are the ones who are rostered in the central city, and so if we take them out, if we have an attendance, we have to take them out of the central city. We will try and, if we know something is coming up, we will try and alter the rosters, as we do, for example, on a regular basis for a Saturday at the Frankton Market, to try and have a presence down there, because that became an attractant for some of our at-risk community. And so when we know something is coming up in advance, we will try and re-roster to have a presence elsewhere around the community.
Okay. So what will they actually do when, so they get called and they turn up to someone huffing in a doorway in Dinsdale? What will they and can they do?
Well,
apart from call the police?
There's a number of things you can do, because firstly, is the person housed? Yeah. Are they on a benefit? Do they need to be put in contact with Ministry of Social Development, with the People's Project? Do they just know that they can't be there? Do they want to be moved on? It's the fact that there is a presence and it's being out there, being seen to actually engage with these people, and have an intervention.
I remember. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, effectively, it's the extension of what they do in the city already. So there's an aspect they're doing that function in the city already. So it also provides confidence to the building owners that, and the retailers, that there is a contact point between that low level of crime or potential crime and the stuff the cops can pick up as well. Because we triage, if there's a phone call comes in and it's clearly a matter for the police, we triage that as well. Yeah. And we'll make sure that the police are informed. So we're not going to be completing the police function, we're just going to be repeating what we do now in those suburban areas, but it's going to rely a lot on the people that ring in and actually report those items.
When you say triage, what do you mean?
Triage, if someone rings in and says, hey, there's a guy here with a gun, I don't think we'll send City Safe out or send out the cops.
Right, yeah. I understand, thank you. So, Calvin, will it work? And I'm not trying to be clear, but will it work?
It will work. Look, this is a really complex social issue, and City Safe on their own are not going to solve it. Right, so if there's no great panacea that we're going to go out there and solve this and we'll take care of the issue. We are seen as being the leading agency across any of the councils in the country.
I get that.
For our approach and the way that we engage with people and the things that we do and our ability to make progress and to genuinely help people.
I get that. I guess the reason for my line of questioning is that I've been in City Safe meetings when you've said, look, hey, these guys lying on the street actually aren't doing anything wrong. And I was a little bit worried about that because then when City Safe come along, what do? Look at them? So are we going to be firm enough? I guess that's where I'm going. Is this going to be effective? Or do we just put up a poster?
So can I just step in there? So I think the fact is you're starting to question whether or not the City Safe program is effective, and that's not the point.
I guess so.
That's not the point behind this resolution. And the other aspect to it is this is a test of a trial to see whether or not the success that we've had in the CBD can be emulated in our broader part of our community. So I think you've got some broader concerns that I think are better addressed with a briefing on the effectiveness of City Safe as a whole, rather than whether or not we question whether the broadening the service out to the community will make sense.
I think it's actually flip of that, Richard, to be fair, because, I've been to those meetings and I was left with a sense that, okay, they're good, they're helpful, but we're talking about extending them out to the suburbs as if they're going to, I'm worried about raising the community's expectations of what they can do.
I guess I would argue that one of the things that would need to be instilled in as part of this would be some community surveys, because at the end of the day, this is about enhancing the level of safety that our communities actually have. And the only way of that is to gauge their perceptions within the community. And so that is the ultimate success, I would argue.
Yep.
If the community feels safer because of their presence, whether you or others might think that's not the case, if the community feels that their safety is improved and that's their perception, I think that's the success.
So that was my next question and my last one. I presume you are going to have a before and after survey with regards to this?
That would be my intention, yes.
Is that baked into the cost of this?
No, but we through Buzz Channel, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Thanks. Calvin, I was at the Rotorua Safety Night. It was very informative, but I also learnt that there was that community, I forget the name of them, that do that voluntary, the neighbourhood watch type support.
There's community patrols.
So aren't they effectively doing what we're going to be doing?
No. And the difference is they are eyes and ears only. They look and they ring. They don't actually engage. The difference with this is on the ground engagement. Community patrols are driving around at night, reporting to the police what they see. I can say that the Chief Executive has challenged me on such things as how could we better utilise community patrols? How could we even look at getting some retired ex-police officers to come out and do some voluntary patrolling? Between the three of us here, we're taking a week each. And so I've already been down and looked at a number of those other options as alternatives. And this is one I keep coming back to as one that's going to have the best chance of being successful in enhancing the community safety.
Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, weekends, Friday, Saturday night, Calvin, I think you said they'd be doing a 10 or a 12-hour shifts. Would they be able to replace our noise control contract with Armaguard, I think it's with? No reason why they couldn't, I presume.
Well, it would be...
They're not warranted.
There's, other than the warranting and some other bits and pieces that go with that, but the difficulty would be then you're going to split your attendance at noise control through over two different agencies. You'll have an outside contractor because...
we will get rid of the outside contractor, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but City Safe can't provide a 24/7 response.
So I think part of the trial is we can also look from time to time at whether or not there was an opportunity to optimise. So when we close out on the report, I don't know if we know up front whether or not we can do this, because they do happen at different locations, because generally the noise complaints are suburban related rather than at suburban centres. But I suggest that you pick that up as part of your closeout, whether or not there would have been an opportunity to optimise as part of the trial against those resources.
Then that would offset the cost of...
Yep. So remember, this has been put forward as an opportunity to kick the tyres. And so if you want to kick the tyres, we need to consider all opportunities for other areas of optimisation, then that's a good idea, Councillor Tooman. But I suggest we go the trial first and then look back rather than trying to mess around with contracts that are in place and have got periods to run, that it probably would be longer than the trial period anyway.
Do the dog control too.
Did you say what was that,
I
Councillor?
said they could do the dog control too, quite.
Probably Chief Executive's role as well.
Councillor Garrett, Deputy Mayor Martin.
I'd love Leo to turn up to volunteer to my...
We've got him in uniform already.
Anyway, just, obviously we've had Labor as part of the coalition government in their manifesto, talking about community policing. I noticed the other day that the former police station, which I think the land was purchased from council, I think years ago from the East Town Belt, that's over near the Hillcrest Knighton Road area, there's another community group in there. It doesn't seem to be any police. So in terms of those community policing stations, which ones are still operational?
None of them are operational as community police stations at this point in time. They have staff in them, but they're not engaged in what you and I might consider the traditional community activity.
So they're just officers? They're officers for the New Zealand Police, but they don't have any...
And a number of those are not sworn officers necessarily.
No.
But they're people performing functions associated with the police working out of various stations.
Yes, at various stations. Can you just give us a brief summary of where things have tracked over the last year or two around community policing? Because obviously this is, I'm just looking at the, the relation, what we're going to do if this passes versus what the police are doing in terms of...
So, Deputy Mayor, we're getting way away from what this is about. We know what CitySafe's about. We're saying, shall we roll it out into the suburbs or not? So we're getting into a deeply political...
I'll be ruled out of order. The questions were expressing a degree of cynicism about what was promised and what is happening, but even I would not dream to criticise the current government, so I'll avoid it.
Okay, so we'll go to debate. Before we go to debate, I'll put an amendment up to exactly what's on the board, but remove the word trial on page 2. So, Deputy Mayor, will you second that?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Where you said, is that for how long?
So that's not a trial, it's on running.
So
it just becomes part of the 10-year...
Yeah, so that will mean that 230,000 would repeat every year for the next 9 years of the 10-year plan.
On the understanding that, obviously, once this, as with any operation, you'll be reviewing its ongoing effectiveness probably out of 6 months to a year to make sure there's been a correct resource allocation.
Yeah, that's in the motion and B.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, Councillor Angela.
Yeah. Look, this is about extending the exceptional service that CitySafe officers provide in our CBD. It is exceptional service, it is, to the suburbs where there isn't a service now. And having a response vehicle is also a fantastic idea, because what it means is if Michael, the owner of Dinsdale Jeweller, is having some antisocial behaviour that's affecting his customers and his business, he can now pick up the phone, call CitySafe and get an immediate response. He can't do that without this new service. CitySafe, I went out and dressed in that lovely high-vis gear. I'm very proud of that actually, and spent the morning with the CitySafe officer. And they do so much more than just moving people on. They know everybody's name. They know all the frequent flyers' names. They connect vulnerable people on the street with social services. They actually look after those frequent flyers. They are guardian angels to them, and that's a pretty special thing for a city to have. They are wonderful ambassadors as well. I think the most contact we had when I went out with Kerry was people saying, excuse me, where are the public toilets? Excuse me, I'm looking for this shop or that shop. And I think that was a pretty special service as well. And look, other cities around New Zealand look on us enviously because they are way behind us in terms of their approach to some kind of city-safe team or strategy, and it's working. So this is an opportunity to build on that success. I actually think that having a trial, it's absolutely my intention to go the full hog later on, but for now I think a trial is the sensible, prudent way. We may need to extend the service. It may be so successful that after 6 months the staff report come back and say, look, we've had this response from the suburbs and the businesses, or we may need to rejig it, or maybe we need to pare it back, I don't know. So I'm prepared to wait for that information, and that's why I think actually a trial is the right way to go here.
So this funding, I believe, will work hand in hand with the Your Help May Harm campaign, which we're all aware of, which we know is about stopping from people giving cash to the homeless and the addictions that they may have and the misuse of that money. I know Councillor O'Leary supports the Your Help May Harm campaign, as does the City, Wisers Group and Hamilton Central Business Association. The second part of that campaign, of course, is about making sure that these people are getting access to the help that they need. So we know that the issue of begging is starting to appear in the suburbs. We've had feedback now for probably 18 months, 2 years. I've had lots of conversations with people who are having trouble with beggars in places like Five Crossroads, Hillcrest and Dinsdale. And this is just making people feel uncomfortable in our city, and it may be that the success of the City Safe is so high that it has pushed those who are asking for cash out into the suburbs. So City Safe are the councils, is the support when people see somebody begging. The campaign of Your Help May Harm is encouraging people to pick up the phone and ring City Safe to tell City Safe to go out and target those people who are asking for cash in an aggressive way. And we need to resource adequately to look after the suburbs as well as the CBD. So I don't believe that this is something that's going to go away. I don't believe it's responsible to employ 5 staff and bring them on a short-term contract of a year. And I don't believe that once we start going in a direction like this that we'll ever back out. So I think the responsible thing to do is to go straight in, bring it in as a service. And remember, guys, this is more than money. This is about actually looking after the people who are asking for money, and it's also about making the people who live in our city, who put into the prosperity of their city, of making them feel comfortable. Councillor James.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, I support both the motion and the amendment, but I'd like to see a trial first to see how we go here. Look, lately we've been having a lot better cooperation with police and City Safe and Hamilton City than, in my experience, we've had probably ever before. And we can't kid ourselves. Police can't get to everything. They are stretched. They have only limited numbers on the street, resourcing. All those community stations, Martin, are closed, not open to the public. But Stuart Nash has promised that they would open them. Look, if we don't have someone to attend these people that are out and about in Hillcrest, Rototuna, Flagstaff, Dinsdale, etc., then no one will attend. That's just a simple fact, and that's unfortunate, because City Safe actually act as eyes and ears for the police. And you know, if our public can't feel safe in their homes or out and about when they're wandering around shopping, so if you don't feel safe in a city, then a city doesn't function properly. I think that you know, with Kelvin, you have to have some sort of trust in Kelvin. Kelvin was the Waikato police commander, and I think you have to have a bit of trust in him. If he says this thing will work, it'll work, because he has his eyes and ears to the ground. He's got the connections with the police here and everything else. So I'm pretty confident it will work. The North Hamilton Community Patrollers only operate at certain hours of the night, and they're pretty restricted, and they don't get out and interact with people. So they're only they stay in the vehicles and observe and report to police on radio, and a lot of them are fairly elderly, so they don't get out of the car to interact with people. That's the difference with City Safe. They actually interact, and I've seen them in town here interacting with people, and they're very good. So I think this is a bit of bang for the buck for the ratepayer. They're going to actually see some sort of good coming out in the community. Instead of we've got some sort of obsession of focusing in the central city for some reason. Let's get them out and about in the suburbs as well to help, because if you've got your eyes and ears open, you'll would have heard by now the amount of angst in the public when they're getting approached at Rototuna or at Flagstaff or everything by these beggars demanding money off them. And you say that they are our vulnerable. Well, yes, some of them are vulnerable. Most of them are just nefarious. So they're out there and swindling people out of money. So I was approached twice at Rototuna on the weekend, and I had some choice words with the person, and they went away. So I think we need to have our guys out and about in the suburbs like they are in town. They're very effective, and I'm fully for this. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Speaking in favour of the motion, not the amendment, I'm excited about the data that we can achieve, and by testing this for 6 months, crime and disorderly behaviour tends to move around, so this will give us an opportunity to get more accurate about what's happening in our suburban shopping centres. And of course, people have a right to feel safe in their local neighbourhood centre, and so for that reason I'm happy to support the motion.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Look, I'll be supporting the motion, not the amendment, because I think a trial is a more responsible thing to do. Calvin, I certainly hope you don't feel that I mistrust you in any way by questioning you. You and I have had some good hearty debates about this, and I'm sure we'll have more. And I certainly don't mistrust you. I think the responsible thing to do, to use Mayor Andrews' phrase, is actually to put it on a trial rather than commit to many, many years ahead, because it may not work. I'll be very interested to see in the research, and I think, if I may make one comment about the research, I think it's one thing to say that people feel safe. It's another thing to actually have them safe. So I'll be very keen to see how that research pans out in the future, but I'll give it my support, definitely. I take James's point that the police are stretched, but really, we've got to be really careful that we're not doing the police's work for them. I'll be looking forward to their promise that the community police stations are open, and maybe we won't need the City Safe after that out there. But I would definitely want to see the results of that trial. All power to you.
Councillor Ryan.
This is a bridge too far for me in terms of our core business. I'll support the council if they make a decision on this today, but I'll be voting against both.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Roll up the wonderful amendment, will you? I'm waiting for the amendment to come up. Yeah, thank you. Right, thank you. I would say, obviously, if the amendment fails, of course I'll support the substantive motion, but I would argue that if you give a clear indication based on all the feedback you've had from those community meetings and from the broader community that Councillor Casson has had a big role in putting together, I think if you went to those community meetings, they wouldn't be talking trial. They'd see this as part of our core business, with due respect. They would be saying your core business is not just restricted to the CBD. Your core business is community safety throughout the whole city, and I do want to certainly commend Paula and her role of the People's Project and all of that, absolutely. But James, I think, has performed a very, very valuable function for us as a collective team in terms of making all those connections. And, I've been to 2 or 3 of those, and I found them very obviously insightful. And one of the reasons I'm going for the amendment, because, there's mention that Kelvin was the former Waikato police commander, and obviously he will go through due process of appointment and interviews, but his networks will be deep and wide just by the nature of his job. And I'm not saying, for example, some of his former retired colleagues will be making application for one of these jobs, but there is a pool, but seriously, there's a very pool of great expertise of New Zealand police who have retired, who might be quite interested in this role. Now, I'm going to argue that if this is a permanent role, subject to item B, where anyone who applies for a permanent job knows that their role is always under review, there's KPIs, there's all of that, but you will certainly have a much broader and deeper recruitment pool in terms of if you're committing to expanding the City Safe project now. That's also another real signal to Mr. Stuart Nash, you know, and I love this government, as you can imagine, but, because some of my old friends, but my message to them is front up. I want to see the colour of your money. I want to see those community stations open again. That's what the people want. So we're sort of fronting up with our bit of that vision for safe, good community policing and backing the wonderful groups like when I was MP, they called the Night Owls and all those wonderful people out there. So that's why I will be obviously supporting the amendment, because I think if you're serious about really starting this project, if you really intend as to go on, and of course we'll calibrate it and we'll adjust it, then by making it permanent, you're going to get a wider pool of people right from the beginning. So that's my humble view.
Councillor Robb.
Look, I disagree. I don't believe this is our core business at all. And I'm struggling to understand previous speakers who have suggested it is, when on one hand they say it is, and on the other hand they suggest that it's central government's business. The role of policing is a central government cost. If they thought we could do it better, they should be funding us rather than the ratepayer funding this policing activity. I think that we have been very successful in providing this service to the city, and the more permanent we make it, the less inclined will any government be to come in and say, look, we'll take this off your hands and attend to it going forward. So I'm favouring at this stage the trial, not because I don't want to see it only work for a short period of time, but I don't want to create the reliance on central government that if we're going to do it, and we're going to call it our core business, which I believe it isn't, that central government will never come to the party and say, let us take it over. We should have been doing it in the first place. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Got a little bit of inspiration from both Ryan and Rob there. I do, and it was great to hear councillors admitting that there are some things that are not our job. And that's, I agree with you both in that regard. The reality is, though, if there's a fire and there's someone who needs to be rescued, you don't wait for the fire. I mean, you've got to get in there and get someone out. So I'm going to have to back down on my principles a bit here, because thank you guys for backing me up, but I can't back you up this time. Because the reality is that we do have problems. We have problems on the streets. We have people, some of them are thugs, some of them are just, some of them are not nice people. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some degree of responsibility or some local knowledge which we can bring to the table, we have some assets, and it's all assets funded by our ratepayers. I fully understand that. But our communities need to feel they're safe, and they need to, in actual fact, be safe. And unfortunately, the real world, Rob, unfortunately, is the central government is not doing those things. And you're right, you did right. That absolutely should be their mandate. It is their mandate, but they're not doing it for whatever reason. I assume they worked with community police stations and they didn't work. But I don't know. I've never seen that report or anything like that. Anyway, so I'm happy to support the trial for 6 months. I would be interested to know, and it's the wrong time to ask the question now, at what stage do you say the trial has worked or not worked? What are the goals we're aiming for? I mean, it's interesting, we do a lot of trials without ever having any goalposts to measure our trial by, so that will be the thing that concerns me. But I'm heartened very much to hear what Ryan said and what Rob said, that there is someone around this table, and not just me, who understands there is a limit to what local authority can do. and here I am just completely contradicting myself.
You're having a good day, Gary.
Yeah, it's a really windy road.
Councillor Angela.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. I'm a little bit perplexed as to the comments around this is not core business for us. By definition, it is our function as local government to keep people safe. Every single thing that we do keeps people safe. The roads that we build keep people safe. The water that we deliver to our residents' homes is under legislation to keep people safe. The policies and the bylaws around alcohol, the policies around drugs, smoking, prostitution, gambling, are all there to keep people safe. The laws that we have about events, where they can run, how they can run on our public parks, in our facilities, are all there to keep people safe. If nothing else, keeping people safe is our number one core function and is the foundation of absolutely every single decision that we make and everything that we do as local government. That is 100% our core business.
We'll go to the board to vote. Voting on the amendment first.
The amendment is lost, 9 against, 2 for.
We now go to the motion.
The motion is carried, 10 for, 1 against.
So we now go to A, H, I and J. Moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor.
So, elected members, these are the wrap-up, basically put a bow on this to enable us to go prepare the budget.
So, Gary, it's on that bit of paper, this one here. Yeah, at the bottom of that, yep.
So to be clear, these are the motions to wrap this together so that we can bring back a draft budget based on the instructions you provided us. The key thing to be aware of is there may well be some further changes based on the work that David alluded to today, and they'll be brought forward to the April 4 meeting as well for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
It's straightforward, Deputy Mayor.
The motion is carried unanimously.
We now go to item 9, which is under separate cover.
The yellow paper in front of you, councillors.
Now moved by Councillor Paula, seconded by myself. Should we go straight to the board? We should be taking this as read and understood. So it's moved by Councillor Paula, seconded by myself. We're on the board waiting to vote. No, I am not. Okay, we'll slow it up. Councillor, Deputy Mayor over here. The yellow bit of paper on your desk.
This is
yep.
governance, as you don't rush. Let me read. This is the Waikato Regional Airport Limited.
Yes.
This is creating a subsidiary for them to affect the, one of the activities.
This is purely, Mr. Murray, this is your reassuring, this is purely an administrative device that we as a shareholder have to approve.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so the board's open. We're resetting the board. Do you want a debate? Yeah, sure. Okay, we'll go to debate. Councillor.
Yeah, I just want to say, look, this is probably going to fall on deaf ears, but I find it quite hard to get this at the beginning of a meeting and then take it as read and understood. It's quite a big ask. because I'm a man of limited intellectual capability. So I'd be quite keen to have a little bit more notice. I just got to say that, and I appreciate the circumstances, but just want to express it as quite hard to understand.
We did have a briefing on this,
We did have a briefing on it.
so maybe you weren't
I knew
there,
that.
and that's why you
I
probably...
knew that, I was just testing
Yeah.
it.
Okay, councillor Paula? Councillor Paula?
Sorry, no, I don't need to.
No. Okay, shall we go to the board to vote?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, resolution to exclude the public, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those for, any against, carried. Okay, we'll just have a water break for just 2 minutes, just grab a cup of tea, go to the bathroom, just while they pack up. So.